Welcome back to RhomanysRealm. I'm Romany and today I'm sketching some polar bears in my Strathmore mixed media sketchbook. I'm very much in love with this paper, as you'll know if you follow me pretty much anywhere, and I hadn't used it yet for Copics. So I decided to give it a try and see what happened. Obviously, it bleeds through to the other side of the paper. That's a foregone conclusion because it's not marker paper and these are alcohol markers. However, it doesn't bleed through to the following page, and that's what's important. I can collage or paint on the back of the page, but I don't want it bleeding through several pages. So it was nice to see that that did not happen. One of the things I wanted to address with this particular tutorial, which is actually a very short version of a much longer tutorial that is up on my Patreon at the moment. I often get asked how to draw white animals. And for me, there's two ways you can go about it. Either you draw the white animal with the outlines in ink as normal, or you don't draw the animal. And I know that sounds weird, but run with me on this. What I do is, or what I did here, is to use negative space. So I'm not drawing the fur, I'm not drawing the polar bear, I'm drawing the shading that I can see within the shapes of the polar bear. A lot of these photo references that I found for polar bears, they were shining white fur against a white sky, against white snow, and you can't really see where the polar bear begins and the snow ends, but you know it's there. So I tried to use some very light greys and this lovely warm sandy yellow to indicate where the colours were. The issue with drawing a polar bear, of course, is that polar bears aren't white. I'm sure most people know that the skin of a polar bear is actually black. But did you know that the fur is not white like a cat or a dog? It's actually translucent. It's tubular and it's completely see-through. So it kind of has a holographic effect when you get it in the light. And similarly when you get it in the shade. So that was my first difficulty. The other difficulty was I needed to put in shadows. But at the same time, I couldn't just use one colour variant, as it were. Normally you use colour and then you do your shadows. But when you have no colour, you have to be creative with your shadows in order to get the contrast. And I like to work with warm and dark. Warm and cool. So that, you know, if the main tone is warm, then I'll use cool shadows. And if the main tone is cool, then I'll use warm shadows. So I decided to use cool greys. I've used cool grey 1, 5 and 7 for the colour of the bear, which is the shading of the white fur that you can't see. Yes, I know. Feel free to rewind that and play it again if it didn't make sense. The fur is what I'm treating as colour. I'm using 3 tones, light, medium and dark, and I'm just doing the shaded areas of that colour. The yellow parts I'm using 2 colours for, and I'm treating those as the shadow areas. And what I noticed with polar bears is that where they have presumably sweat glands or something like that, like around their feet and under their necks and on the inside of their legs and under their arms, they have kind of a yellowy tinge to their fur. So I used that as my shading, and I quite liked the fact that the shading kind of looked like it was catching the sun. Yes, I know how weird that sounds. Everything in this is opposite what you would think. But we are drawing white things. So we're technically not drawing anything. We're drawing the things around the thing. I know. Obviously, if you want to draw a white bear or any white animal, the easiest way to draw said white animal is to take some white supplies and use a dark toned paper. I mean, it seems obvious. But if you really want to challenge yourself, use colours to depict the negative space around a white animal. And see how you go. See if it looks white when you're finished. I was okay with this. I mean, I went in with the, like I say, the 3 greys, the 2 browns, and I used a dark blue. Those areas are actually black, but I didn't want to flatten them out. So I used a Prussian blue, and I go in later with colour pencil over the top to darken that up. And I think I used 2 shades of grey to make that blue much darker. And on top of the Copics, I went in with the same colourway that I'd already used. So 2 shades of that tan colour, 3 cool greys, 1 dark, 1 light, 1 medium. And I wasn't adding shading, I was adding texture to the shading I'd already laid down. So trying to make it look like fur. Now, this is where my general technique of cutting into an area really paid off. I like to overpaint and then cut back in to get the edge of the fur. So I had put the shadows down, which was giving me the underlying tone, and then I cut back in around that with negative space and the dark shadows to create the white fur. You'll see in a moment that in some areas I decided the white fur had kind of got lost. It turned into orange fur or grey fur. So what I ended up doing was going back in afterwards with a gel pen, a white gel pen, and again cutting away the areas that I felt were too dark. So those orange legs, they work and they look like the fur, but there was not enough contrast between that and the white. I didn't leave enough white of the paper. So I went back in with some white gel pen to lighten it up. I also came in where the fur was overlaying anything. So the dark areas of the ear, I had drawn in quite a rough area, but then I went back in and kind of scribbled over the edges to get the little bits of fur that looked like it was going over the edge of the hole in his ear. I did the same with the eyes. So where the eyes are very flat initially, I went back in and I had his fur coming down over the top of his eyes, where you would see his eyelashes. I added in some more white straggly bits to the darker grey areas. Here you can see a much more close-up version of what I was doing with the eyes and the nose, just to break up those harsh lines and really give him that look of having lots of texture and lots of white fur. And I think it worked. I think I could have done it better. I maybe should have done a couple more. But I think overall I was pretty happy with how they turned out. And I do believe that they still look like polar bears. They don't look like strange yellow and grey bears. They definitely look like polar bears. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Why not give it a go yourself? See how you get on trying to draw a white animal on a white background. It's fun and very challenging. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you again shortly. Bye.